My name is Sarah Whitmore. I'm 32 years old, an art historian in Boston. At the reading of my grandfather's will, my entire family was stunned when I, the daughter who was always looked down on, inherited the entire art collection worth hundreds of millions of dollars. My brother Michael roared that I wasn't worthy, while Thomas, a lawyer, coldly threatened to drag me through the courts and destroy my reputation until I gave it all up. They thought I was just a weak lamb, easily crushed. But they didn't know my grandfather had left me a secret weapon, a handwritten note that led me to a truth buried right behind a portrait. What I found weren't paintings. It was evidence of a murder and the decades of cover-ups that built the Whitmore family's massive fortune. They thought they were backing me into a corner, but they were mistaken. They didn't know that I was the one holding what could burn their entire empire to the ground. I grew up inside that house with my brothers Michael and Thomas. Michael is now 35 and still the golden boy. He runs luxury gyms, dates models, shows up in magazines with his teeth flashing white. Thomas is 34, a lawyer in Manhattan with ambition sharp enough to cut glass. They were always my mother's pride. She paraded them at every party like trophies. And me, I was the odd one. The girl who loved paintings more than cocktails, who spent summer afternoons sketching in the attic while the rest played tennis by the pool. My mother Charlotte never hid her disappointment. She would tilt her head, give me that practice smile, and say, "It is nice you have a passion, dear, but do not let it consume you." As if loving art was a sickness I might recover from if I just tried hard enough. My father Henry was quieter, almost absent even when he was present. He would sit at the far end of the table, glass of bourbon in hand, nodding at whatever Michael or Thomas said. The only one who truly understood me was my grandfather Edward. He was my mother's father, and he lived in that estate like a monarch. He had built one of the most respected private art collections in New England. Paintings from Florence, sketches from Paris, manuscripts saved from crumbling monasteries. He treated those works as living things, polished their frames himself, whispered their histories as if they were family secrets. He gave me my first real book on art history when I was 10. He took me to Florence when I was 16. I stood in front of Botticelli's Birth of Venus with tears streaming down my face while he squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Do you see, Sarah? Do you see how truth can survive for centuries?" He believed in me when nobody else did. Family dinners were battlefields. My mother hosting in her pearls, Michael bragging about some new investment, Thomas lecturing about law. I would mention Caravaggio and the room would fall silent. My mother would quickly change the subject. My father would sip his drink. My brothers would smirk. But my grandfather would lean forward and say, "Which painting? Tell us." And for a few minutes, it felt like the spotlight was on me. Without him, I would have drowned in that silence. When I was 14, I won a statewide essay competition on American Impressionism. I came home waving the certificate, glowing with pride. My mother glanced at it, set it down, and said, "That is nice, dear, but it will not get you into Harvard." Then she went back to helping Michael with a debate. I locked myself in my room and cried. That night my grandfather knocked softly, came in, and told me, "Do not ever let anyone make you feel small for loving what you love. The world needs guardians of memory." That moment sealed my fate. I promised myself I would follow art wherever it led. It led me through graduate school, through long nights of study, through conferences where I was invisible until I opened my mouth. My brothers mocked me. Michael called it a hobby degree. Thomas said I was wasting my intelligence. But I earned my PhD. I carved a career in museums. I proved, at least to myself, that I was more than their jokes. And yet, no matter how far I ran, the estate pulled me back. Birthdays, Christmas, charity galas. I would walk through those doors and feel 12 again. My mother is still comparing. My father is still absent. My brothers are still circling each other. And me, still the odd one out. The only difference was that my grandfather never stopped reminding me that I mattered. 2 years ago at Thanksgiving, he raised his glass and said to Sarah, "She's the only one of us who understands the heart of this family." People laughed politely, but I saw the way my brother's eyes hardened. They hated when he singled me out. Maybe that was the first spark. Outside of family, I built a different kind of life. My apartment in Cambridge was small but mine. I had Willow, a gray cat who thought she owned the place. I worked long hours, but I did not mind. My colleagues respected me. I published articles. I had a friend, David, from Yale. He was charming, ambitious, always moving through the art world like he was on a stage. We traveled to conferences together. We shared secrets late at night. I knew he had once dated Thomas, but I brushed it aside. We had our own friendship, or so I thought. For a while I believed things had stabilized. I believed I could balance my world, work in Boston, family at arm's length, a grandfather who was my anchor. I was wrong. One October morning my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was cold, stripped of all performance. "Your grandfather is gone," she said, just like that. I froze. The world blurred. I could hear the rain against my window, the faint hum of traffic, and nothing else. My chest caved in. My anchor was gone. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the floor. Images rushed through me. His hand pointed at a painting, his voice whispering secrets. The way he winked at me when I was nervous. I felt as if the walls of my apartment had shrunk. I did not cry right away. I went numb. Hours later, I found myself on the train to Providence, the landscape sliding past in gray streaks. I kept expecting my phone to buzz with him calling. It never did. When I arrived at the estate, the air was heavy with lilies and grief. Relatives filled the house, my mother in black pearls greeting guests with practiced sorrow. My father shook hands stiffly. Michael held court like he was the host. Thomas moved through the crowd like a politician. I felt invisible, like always, except for the empty space where my grandfather should have been. That night, I wandered the gallery alone. The paintings glowed under soft light. I could almost hear his voice. "Look closer, Sarah. Look for the story nobody else sees." I pressed my hand against the frame of a Dutch still life and whispered, "I promise I will not let you down." I did not know then what he had left behind for me. I did not know the storm waiting inside his will. I only knew that the one person who believed in me was gone and that nothing in my family would ever be the same again. The morning of the funeral was cold and gray. Providence has a way of looking somber in October, as if the sky itself knows how to mourn. I stood in front of the mirror in my old bedroom at the estate, smoothing the black dress that I had not worn in years. My hair was pulled back tight, my eyes already raw from tears I had allowed only in private. Downstairs the house buzzed with quiet chaos. Relatives whispered, guests arrived in black coats, the scent of lilies filled every corner. My mother moved through the rooms like a conductor directing a silent orchestra. She placed a hand on one guest's shoulder, nodded to another, her pearls shining even in dim light. My father stood near the door, shaking hands with the firmness of a man who believed control could mask grief. Michael and Thomas were already in their suits, Michael with his tie a little too bright for the occasion, Thomas with his expression carefully composed. When I stepped into the hall, Michael looked me up and down. "You clean up nice, sis," he said with a smirk. "Not really the time," I answered softly. "Come on, I'm trying to lighten the mood." "Then maybe try silence," I muttered, walking past him. Thomas caught my arm briefly. His grip was gentle but firm. "You should stick close today," he said. "Why?" "Because people will be watching. Grandpa's death is more complicated than you think." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" He released my arm. "Just remember, appearances matter." Then he walked away before I could press further. The service itself was beautiful. The church was filled with soft music and voices reciting prayers. I sat in the front row beside my mother, who dabbed her eyes but never let her mascara run. My father's jaw was clenched. Michael stared at the coffin as if expecting it to open. Thomas bowed his head in perfect composure. I kept my eyes on the casket draped in white flowers. Inside lay the man who had given me more than anyone else ever had. I wanted to stand and shout that none of these people knew him the way I did, that none of them understood his passion or his secrets. Instead, I sat still, my hands trembling in my lap. Afterward, the house filled again. Glasses of wine appeared, trays of food circulated, and the whispers began. Old family friends, distant cousins, business associates. They spoke about my grandfather's legacy, about his collection, about the estate. His body was barely in the ground and already people were speculating. I slipped into the gallery to breathe. The room was dim and cool, the paintings watching silently. My mother found me there. "Sarah," she said softly. I turned. "Yes. You shouldn't isolate yourself, people will notice." "I don't care if they notice, I needed air." Her eyes narrowed. "You always were dramatic. Please, for once, think of the family's image." "The family's image?" My voice cracked. "Mom, he just died." She looked away. "All the more reason to keep things orderly." Then she left, heels clicking against the marble floor. Later that evening, we gathered in the library for the reading of the will. The fire crackled, the curtains drawn tight. My heart pounded as Mr. Harrison, my grandfather's lawyer, adjusted his glasses and opened the envelope. He began with formalities, small bequests to charities, acknowledgments to longtime staff. Then he paused, cleared his throat, and continued. "To my beloved grandchildren," he read, "I leave the following. To my grandsons Michael and Thomas, I leave a financial gift of $500,000 each." Michael grinned, leaned back in his chair. Thomas nodded, satisfied. I braced myself for my name. To my granddaughter Sarah, I entrust the Whitmore art collection, including all paintings, sculptures, and manuscripts currently held on the estate, with full authority over their preservation, display, or dispersal. The room froze. My breath caught in my throat. My brothers turned toward me in unison. Michael's grin disappeared. Thomas's jaw tightened. "What?" Michael's voice was sharp. "That has to be a mistake." Harrison shook his head. "It is clearly written." Thomas leaned forward. "You're saying she gets the entire collection, not just part of it?" "That is correct." Michael slammed his hand on the table. "That collection is worth hundreds of millions, and she gets it, she doesn't know how to manage it." "I think she knows more than any of us," my grandfather's lawyer replied calmly. My mother's face went pale. She opened her mouth and closed it again. My father stared at the fire, silent. I whispered, "I don't understand." Harrison looked at me kindly. "Your grandfather made his wishes clear. He trusted you with what he valued most." Michael laughed bitterly. "So we get cash like some distant cousins while she gets the crown jewels? Unreal." Thomas's eyes narrowed at me. "Enjoy it while you can, Sarah. Nothing is final until it's tested in court." The room erupted in murmurs. My mother finally stood. "That's enough," she said sharply. "We will honor your grandfather's wishes, at least for tonight." But I could already feel the fire burning in my brother's eyes. Later that night, I sat alone in the gallery, staring at the portraits. I whispered into the silence, "Why me, Grandpa? Why would you do this?" The paintings stared back, their secrets locked behind layers of paint. David arrived the next morning. He had driven up from New Haven when he heard the news. We met in the kitchen while the rest of the family argued upstairs. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he said, pulling me into a hug. "Thank you." My voice was muffled against his shoulder. "I heard about the will." "Of course you did, everyone has." He pulled back to look at me. "This could be incredible for you, the collection is legendary." "Incredible, it feels like a curse." He frowned. "Why would you say that?" "Because my brothers are going to come after me. I saw it in their faces." "Then fight them." "You have the knowledge, the credentials. He left it to you for a reason." Before I could answer, Michael entered. Well, he said, "the princess of paintings and her loyal subject." "Michael, not now," I snapped. "Why not now? Let's be real, you don't deserve that collection." David stepped forward. "Back off, Michael." Michael laughed. "Of course you defend her, you always did have a soft spot." He glanced between us, his smirk growing. "Or maybe it's more than that." I glared at him. "Get out." He raised his hands in mock surrender. "Fine, but this isn't over." He left, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the hall. I sank into a chair, shaking. David sat beside me. "He's bluffing," David said quietly. "No," I whispered. "He's not. He's never going to forgive me for this. Neither of them will." I didn't know then that my grandfather had set us all on a path of betrayal, suspicion, and secrets that would rip the family apart. All I knew was that I felt the weight of centuries pressing down on me, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to carry it. I barely slept that night. The house felt like it was breathing around me, every creak of the floorboards echoing in my chest. I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my old bedroom, listening to the muffled voices of my brothers arguing down the hall. The gallery was beneath me, filled with paintings that suddenly belonged to me, though I did not feel like their owner. I felt like a thief who had stumbled into treasure I never asked for. By morning the tension was so thick you could slice it with a knife. My mother was at the head of the breakfast table, her hands folded neatly, her expression unreadable. My father drank his coffee in silence. Michael scrolled on his phone, muttering curses under his breath. Thomas had a stack of legal papers already open beside his plate. When I walked in, Michael looked up. "Well, look who's here, Queen of the Gallery." "Please stop calling me that," I said quietly. Thomas didn't look up. "Get used to it. That's how the press will talk about you if this goes public." "Press?" I asked, alarmed. He adjusted his tie. "People care about this collection, Sarah. You think they won't notice when control shifts? They'll be writing about it within a week." My stomach dropped. "I don't want any attention. I just want to respect what Grandpa wanted." Michael scoffed. "What Grandpa wanted was for us to hate each other from the grave, apparently." My mother finally spoke. Her voice was calm but edgy. "Enough. We will not discuss this at the breakfast table. Sarah, I expect you to behave with discretion. Your brothers are upset, understandably." "Understandably?" I repeated. "Mom, they got $500,000 each. I didn't ask for this." $500,000 is nothing compared to what you were given," Michael snapped. "Don't play the victim." I set my coffee cup down harder than I meant to. "I didn't play anything. Grandpa made his choice." Thomas looked at me then, his eyes cold. "Choices can be contested." The room went silent. I stared at him, trying to read his face. He gave me nothing. After breakfast, I escaped into the garden. The air was crisp, the sky heavy with clouds. I sat on a stone bench and tried to breathe. That was when David found me. "You look like you're about to combust," he said gently, sitting beside me. "I might, they're circling me like vultures. They're angry, sure, but you have the law on your side." "Thomas is the law," I said bitterly. He smiled faintly. "Not the only law." For a moment we sat in silence, the fountain bubbling softly behind us. Then he asked, "Do you believe your grandfather did this just because you're the most qualified?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Edward Whitmore was deliberate. He knew what leaving the collection to you would do to the family." I shook my head. "Are you saying he wanted this fight?" "Maybe not wanted, maybe expected, maybe prepare for it." His words unsettled me. That afternoon, Harrison, the lawyer, requested to meet with me privately in the library. I sat in the leather chair my grandfather used to claim, the scent of old books pressing down on me. "There are details," Harrison began, "that your brothers have not yet noticed. Clauses in the will. Your grandfather anticipated conflict." I leaned forward. "What kind of clauses?" He adjusted his glasses. "The collection is not yours to sell freely. You are a trustee, not an absolute owner. Any attempt by other family members to contest your role results in forfeiture of their inheritance." My eyes widened. "He trapped them." Harrison nodded slowly. "He wanted to ensure the collection would be preserved, not dismantled by greed." I sat back dizzy. He knew them too well. Later, when I returned to my room, I found Michael waiting outside my door. "Can we talk?" he asked. I crossed my arms. "About what?" "About fairness. There's nothing fair about death, Michael." He stepped closer. "Listen, I don't care about the paintings. I care about money. You and I both know those pieces could be sold for more than this house is worth. We could split it, quietly." I shook my head. "No, I'm not selling Grandpa's life work." His jaw clenched. "You think holding on to it makes you noble? It makes you a fool. Don't come crying to me when the upkeep bankrupts you." "I'm not afraid of work," I said. "You should be afraid of us," he whispered. Then he walked away. I sat on my bed shaking. The Michael I knew had always been selfish, but I had never heard that threat in his voice before. That night Thomas cornered me in the gallery. He stood beneath a portrait of a 17th-century nobleman, his reflection caught in the glass. "Michael is reckless," he said. "I'm aware," I answered. "But I'm not. I think long-term." "Get to the point." He studied me. "The collection is power. Political, financial, social. People will court you, manipulate you, use you. You're not ready for that. I can learn. Or you can hand it over to someone who already knows." I laughed bitterly. "Let me guess, you." His eyes narrowed, but he didn't deny it. "I'll never give it to you," I said firmly. He stepped closer. "Then don't be surprised when you find out who your real friends are." The words chilled me. I told David about it later when we met in the kitchen at midnight, whispering over mugs of tea. "They're both after me," I said. "They've always been after you, Sarah. They just never had a reason until now. I can't do this alone." He put his hand over mine. "You won't." For a moment I believed him, but the next day something strange happened. As I began inventorying the collection, I noticed one of the Dutch landscapes didn't match the catalog notes. The brushwork was wrong. The colors too bright. My heart raced. I pulled out my grandfather's old records. According to his notes, this painting was an original, but what hung on the wall was a forgery. I stared at it, cold sweat trickling down my back. Who would dare replace it? And when? I wasn't ready to tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, I returned to my room and closed the door. For the first time in my life, the estate felt less like a home and more like a battlefield. My grandfather's ghost seemed to whisper through the walls. "You wanted the truth, Sarah. Now you'll have to live with it." I woke up the next morning to the sound of voices echoing through the hallway. At first I thought I was dreaming, but when I sat up, the voices sharpened, angry, clipped. I walked to my door and pressed my ear against the wood. It was Michael and Thomas. "She doesn't even know what she's holding," Michael was saying. "She knows enough," Thomas replied. "That makes her dangerous." Dangerous. "She's pathetic. Don't underestimate her." My stomach tightened. I opened the door quickly and both of them fell silent when they saw me standing there in my robe. "Morning," I said, trying to sound casual. Thomas gave me a thin smile. "Morning, Sarah," Michael muttered. Princess woke up and walked away. I showered and dressed slowly, trying to calm myself, but when I came downstairs, the tension hit me like a wall. My mother sat in the dining room directing the staff with clipped commands. My father sat with his paper, glasses perched on his nose, a glass of bourbon already at his elbow even though it was barely 9. Michael paced at the end of the table, phone in his hand. "Look," he said into it, "I'll call you back later, just make sure the offer stands." Then he hung up. When he noticed me, he gave a sly smile. "Business?" I asked. "None of your concern." It sounded like my concern. Don't flatter yourself, he snapped. Thomas entered with a stack of papers and dropped them on the table. Estate documents, he said. You're already working? I asked. Someone has to, he replied without looking up. Do you even realize how expensive it is to maintain that collection? Security, insurance, restoration? It will bleed you dry. I'll figure it out. His lips curved in a faint smile. That's what you think. My mother turned her sharp eyes on me. Your brothers are right to be concerned, she said. Concerned? I asked. You may have the collection, Sarah, but this family's reputation is still at stake. Do not embarrass us. Embarrass you? Mom, Grandpa chose me. You act like I stole it. You always were dramatic, she muttered. Michael slammed his phone on the table. She doesn't deserve any of it, he said. I snapped. You got $500,000. He leaned across the table, his face inches from mine. That's pocket change compared to what you got handed. Don't pretend it's the same. I held his gaze, my pulse hammering. I didn't ask for this. Grandpa trusted me, maybe because he knew neither of you could handle it without selling it off piece by piece. His nostrils flared. You'll regret saying that. Thomas cleared his throat calmly, like a judge bringing order to a courtroom. We could avoid all this hostility if you agreed to a compromise. What kind of compromise? I asked. He folded his hands. Joint management. You let us share control. Publicly, it looks unified. Privately, we help you shoulder the burden. I laughed. Translation, you take it away from me. His smile didn't fade. Think it over. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the hardwood. No, I won't compromise. The silence that followed was thick. My father finally lowered his paper. His voice was heavy with bourbon and fatigue. Enough, he said. I will not have my children bickering like vultures. Then maybe you should talk to them, I said, pointing at my brothers. Michael scoffed. She plays the victim like it's an Olympic sport. I shot back. At least I don't sell everything I touch for a quick profit. His face darkened. Say that again? Enough, my father thundered. The table went still. He set his glass down hard. I won't hear another word of it. I walked out before my tears could fall in front of them. In the gallery, I felt safer, surrounded by canvases that didn't talk back. I walked slowly, notebook in hand, scribbling notes as I inventoried each piece. When I stopped in front of the Dutch landscape, my throat tightened. The strokes were too bright, too smooth, too modern. I flipped through Grandpa's old catalog. According to his notes, it was authentic, but my eyes told me otherwise. Sarah, I jumped. David stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. You scared me, I said. Sorry, you looked intense. I think one of these paintings is a forgery. His eyes widened. You're serious? Dead serious. Look at the strokes. Too polished. Too clean. It doesn't match the period. He stepped closer, squinting. You might be right. Who would swap it? That's what terrifies me, someone in this family. Before he could answer, Thomas's voice drifted in from the hall. Talking about me? He stepped inside, smirk fixed like armor. No, I said. David crossed his arms. We're discussing the collection. Thomas tilted his head. Be careful with accusations, Sarah. Words have consequences. I snapped. Are you threatening me again? He shrugged. Just reminding you, you're in over your head. Then he left, his footsteps echoing like a gavel. I sank onto the bench, trembling. David sat beside me. You can't let him get under your skin. I don't know how much longer I can fight them, I whispered. You don't have a choice, he said. This is only the beginning. That evening, my mother summoned us all to the parlor. The fire blazed, shadows flickering across her face. We sat in a circle like unwilling jurors. This family is falling apart, she began. Michael scoffed. Because of her. He jerked his thumb at me. Because of greed, I snapped. My mother slammed her hand on the armrest. Enough, your grandfather wanted unity. Michael laughed bitterly. Unity? He handed her billions in art and left us with scraps. I raised my voice. $500,000 is not scraps. You're just angry it wasn't more. He shot to his feet. You think you're better than us because you memorized a bunch of dusty books. I stood too, shaking. No, I think I was the only one Grandpa could trust not to sell his legacy for a new car. Thomas spoke softly, but his words cut deeper than Michael's shouting. There are legal avenues, he said. Do not bring lawsuits into this house, my mother hissed. Why not? Michael demanded. It's the only way. Because it will disgrace us, she snapped. My father's voice cracked like a whip. Sit down, all of you. We froze. His face was red, his hands trembling as he pointed at me. You think you can handle this, Sarah? You think being his favorite makes you strong enough? You have no idea what you're up against. I swallowed hard. I have more ideas than you think. The fire popped, sparks jumping. Nobody spoke again. Afterward, I fled onto the balcony, the cold air biting my cheeks. David followed. You were brave, he said. I was terrified. Same thing sometimes. I hugged myself. They're never going to forgive me. Probably not, he admitted. Then what do? You protect the collection, you protect yourself. I turned to him. His eyes were steady, but there was something in them I couldn't read. Before I could ask, he smiled and the mask was back in place. When I finally returned to my room, I noticed something on the floor. A folded piece of paper slipped under the door. My heart pounded as I picked it up. The handwriting was shaky but familiar, my grandfather's. Trust no one. The truth is buried deeper than you think. Start with the woman in blue. My breath caught. The woman in blue, the portrait I had loved since I was a girl, the one Grandpa used to whisper about. My hands trembled as I clutched the note. Even from the grave, he was guiding me. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the note until my hands cramped. The words burned into me like fire. Trust no one. The truth is buried deeper than you think. Start with the woman in blue. I whispered out loud, Grandpa, what are you trying to tell me? The house was quiet now, midnight, the kind of silence that hums in your ears. I slipped out of my room barefoot, the old floorboards creaking under me. My heart raced as I made my way down to the gallery. The lights were dim motion sensors casting a faint glow on the paintings. And there she was, the woman in blue. I had stood in front of her portrait 1,000 times growing up, but tonight it felt different. Her eyes followed me as if she knew I carried a secret. I whispered, what do you know? Her face was pale, her lips painted faintly pink, her gown a shimmering blue. When I leaned closer, I noticed something I had never seen before, a faint irregularity near the lower edge of the frame. My fingers traced it, a seam. Sarah! I jumped, spinning around. David stood in the doorway, his hair tousled, eyes heavy with sleep. What are you doing? He asked. Grandpa left me a note. He told me to start with her. He frowned. What note? I hesitated. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind, trust no one. But this was David, my friend, the one person I thought I could count on. I handed him the note. He read it quickly, his eyes narrowing. Trust no one, he repeated softly. That's ominous. Tell me about it, I said. We both turned back to the painting. Help me with this, I whispered. Together we examined the frame. David pressed gently at the seam. The faint click, a hidden panel slid open at the back of the frame. My breath caught. Inside was a folded envelope, yellowed with age. My hands shook as I pulled it out. On the front was my grandfather's handwriting again. It said only, for Sarah. I tore it open carefully. Inside was a letter. My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, it means my predictions were correct. The collection is not merely art. It is evidence. There are truths buried in these walls that could ruin this family. Protect them. Protect yourself. The woman in blue guards the first piece of the puzzle. Look deeper, and remember your brothers will stop at nothing. Do not let them deceive you. Grandpa, I sank onto the bench, the words blurring as tears filled my eyes. Evidence? I whispered. David leaned over my shoulder. Evidence of what? I don't know, but he wanted me to find it. Suddenly, we heard footsteps in the hall. I shoved the letter into my pocket and slammed the panel shut just as Michael appeared. He looked at us suspiciously. What are you two doing down here in the middle of the night? Looking at the collection, I said quickly. Michael smirked. Romantic, isn't it? A dead man's treasures in the middle of the night. David's jaw tightened. Go back to bed, Michael. Michael stepped closer, his eyes narrowing at me. You're hiding something, he said. I'm not, I lied. He stared at me for a long moment, then laughed quietly. You've never been good at lying, sis. I'll find out what it is. Then he left, his footsteps echoing like thunder. I let out a shaky breath. David whispered, you need to be more careful. I know. The next morning, my mother called me into her sitting room. She was arranging flowers, her pearls glinting in the sunlight. You look tired, she said without looking at me. I didn't sleep much. You need to, you'll collapse if you're not careful. And then what good will you be to the family? I sat stiffly. What do you want, Mom? She turned, her expression icy. To warn you, your brothers are furious. Michael is reckless, but Thomas, he is patient. He will use the law against you. Don't underestimate him. Why are you telling me this? Because even if I don't agree with what your grandfather did, you're still my daughter, and I don't want to see you destroyed. For a moment, I almost believed she cared. Then she went back to her flowers and dismissed me with a flick of her hand. Later that day, I confronted Thomas in the study. I know you're planning something, I said. He raised an eyebrow. And, don't play dumb, you've been studying those documents since the will was read. What's your angle? He smiled thinly. My angle is survival. The law is on my side. Not if Grandpa anticipated you. His eyes darkened. What do you mean by that? Just that he was smarter than you think. He leaned closer. Careful, Sarah, you're in way over your head. That night I sat at my desk with the letter in front of me, reading it over and over. Evidence, truths buried in these walls. What could he mean? David knocked softly on my door. Come in, I said. He entered, holding 2 mugs of tea. Thought you could use this. I smiled faintly. Thanks. He set the mugs down and sat beside me. What now? I think the painting is only the beginning. There must be more clues hidden in the collection. And your brothers. They'll never let me search in peace. Then you can't let them know what you're doing. I looked at him. Can I trust you? He hesitated for a split second before nodding. Of course. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. But as I lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, my grandfather's words echoed in my head. Trust no one. And I couldn't shake the fear that even David might not be what he seemed. The next morning, I woke to the sound of raised voices drifting up from the kitchen. At first, I tried to ignore it, but the anger in Michael's tone was too sharp to block out. I slipped on my sweater and walked down the stairs quietly, stopping just before the last step. She's hiding something, Michael snapped. Speculation, Thomas replied coolly. I know her face. She found something. I want to know what it is. You'll know when I know, Thomas said. Don't treat me like a child, Tom. Then stop acting like one. I stepped into the room before Michael could explode. Both of them turned toward me. Good morning, I said evenly, though my chest was tight. Michael smirked. Good morning, Queen of Secrets, I sighed. If you're going to call me that every day, it's going to get old fast. Not as old as your lies, he shot back. Thomas closed his folder with a snap. Enough, we're wasting time. I poured myself coffee, refusing to look at them. If you two are so worried about secrets, maybe you should take a look at your own. Michael's jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? Just that you're both too busy watching me to realize I'm watching you. The silence that followed was thick. My mother's voice broke it when she entered, perfectly dressed, her pearls catching the light. Children, she said smoothly, this constant bickering is beneath us. Then tell them to stop accusing me, I muttered. She ignored me, turning to my brothers. We will not drag the Whitmore name through the mud with your petty fights. Do you understand? Michael rolled his eyes. Thomas gave a curt nod. I left the room before anyone could say more. Later that day, I went back to the gallery. The portrait of the woman in blue seemed to glow brighter than ever. I ran my fingers along the edges again, searching for more hidden panels, but found nothing. Frustrated, I stepped back and stared. That was when I noticed something strange in the background of the painting. A faint shadow near the corner of the canvas, almost like an object that didn't belong. Why didn't I ever see that before? I whispered. A voice behind me answered, because you weren't looking for it. I spun around. It was David. He walked toward me slowly, his eyes on the painting. I can't stop thinking about your grandfather's letter, he said. Evidence, truth, what could he have meant? I don't know, but this painting is hiding something more. Look at that shadow near the corner. He squinted. It could be intentional, or it could be overpainting. Overpainting? Artists sometimes painted over earlier sketches. Sometimes even whole images. X-rays can reveal what's underneath. My pulse quickened. We'd need equipment. I can arrange that, David said. His tone was calm, but something about the quickness of his answer unsettled me. Before I could reply, Michael's voice carried in from the hallway. You two again? What's the deal? He stepped inside, his eyes darting between us. Are you hiding something behind this painting? He asked. No, I said firmly. Michael laughed. Your face says otherwise. I swear, Sarah, you're the worst liar. David stepped forward. Leave her alone, Michael. Michael smirked. You know, it's funny how close you two are, almost too close. My stomach twisted. Get out, I snapped. He gave a mock salute. Fine, but remember, secrets don't stay buried. Then he left. David exhaled. He's going to cause real trouble. He already has, I said. That evening, I found my father sitting alone in the library, a glass of bourbon in his hand. The firelight flickered across his tired face. I hesitated in the doorway. Dad, he looked up. Sarah, can I sit? He gestured to the chair across from him. For a while, we sat in silence. Finally, I said, Did Grandpa ever talk to you about the collection? He took a long sip. He talked about it to everyone. I mean about what it really means. My father's eyes clouded. Edward carried secrets, Sarah, heavy ones, some he took to his grave, others he left behind. What kind of secrets? He shook his head. The kind that could destroy us. I leaned forward. Then why leave them with me? Because you're the only one who might tell the truth. His words hit me like a blow. I wanted to ask more, but he stood abruptly and left the room, leaving me alone with the crackle of the fire. That night I couldn't sleep. Every shadow in the room felt alive. Around 2 a.m, I heard faint footsteps outside my door. I held my breath, waiting. The handle rattled softly, then silence. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. Someone had tried to come in. The next morning I confronted Thomas. Were you near my room last night? He looked genuinely confused. No, why would I? Because someone tried my door. Maybe you're paranoid, he said smoothly, or maybe you're lying. His eyes narrowed. Careful, Sarah. I turned away, but unease gnawed at me. In the afternoon, David brought equipment from a friend at Yale, infrared imaging gear small enough to use discreetly. We set it up in the gallery when the rest of the family was occupied. As the image of the woman in blue began to reveal under layers, my breath caught. Beneath the paint was another figure, faint but clear, a man's face, twisted in anger. Oh my God, I whispered. David stared. Why would someone paint over this? I don't know, but Grandpa wanted me to find it. The man's eyes seemed to bore into mine from across centuries. A secret hidden under beauty. Before we could study further, the door burst open. Michael and Thomas stood there, both furious. What the hell are you doing? Michael demanded. Research, I said, trying to keep calm. With stolen equipment, Thomas added. It's not stolen, David said quickly. Michael stormed forward. You think you can just dig into Grandpa's stuff without us? We have a right to know. No, I said firmly. You forfeited that when you decided to fight me. Michael's face twisted. You're going to regret this, Sarah, I swear it. Thomas didn't say anything, but his silence was worse than Michael's rage. He just stared at me, calculating as if I was a puzzle he intended to solve and destroy. When they finally left, I sank against the wall, shaking. David crouched beside me. You can't stop now. Whatever this is, it's bigger than all of them. I know, I whispered, but I'm scared. He put his hand over mine. Then let me carry some of that fear with you. For a moment I wanted to believe him. I needed to, but then my grandfather's words echoed again. Trust no one. And deep in my gut, I wondered if that warning included the man sitting right beside me. I didn't tell anyone else about what we saw beneath the paint that day. Not my mother, not my father, certainly not my brothers. The image of that man's face haunted me as if he had stepped out of the canvas and followed me through the halls. His eyes were dark, angry, almost alive. The next morning, I went to the local university library in Providence. I told my family I was running errands, but really I was looking for records. Old catalogs, journals, anything about the provenance of the woman in blue. I sat at a heavy oak table surrounded by the smell of dust and ink, combing through pages. David came with me, leaning over my shoulder. Anything yet? He asked. Not much, I muttered. This painting came into Grandpa's possession in the 1950s, bought at an estate sale in Boston. Before that, no clear records. So the trail goes cold. For now, I rubbed my temples. But why paint over a man's face? Why hide him? David leaned back. Maybe he was dangerous or disgraced. Or maybe he knew something, I whispered. We were interrupted by my phone buzzing. It was Thomas. Against my better judgment, I answered. Where are you? He demanded. Out. Out where? That's none of your business. Everything about you is my business now, he said coldly. I'm not your property, Thomas. There was a pause. Then he said, You're making a mistake, Sarah. The deeper you dig, the more you'll regret it. And he hung up. I stared at the phone, my hands trembling. David asked, What did he say? I shook my head. Nothing I didn't already know. That evening, back at the estate, I found my father alone in the library again. He looked more tired than usual, his tie loose, his bourbon glass half empty. Dad, I said softly, who is the woman in blue? He looked at me sharply. Why do you ask? Grandpa left me a note. He told me to start with her. His face paled. Edward should have burned that painting. My heart pounded. Why? He shook his head. Because of what lies beneath it. You mean the man? His eyes widened. You saw him. Yes, for a long moment he stared into the fire. Then he whispered, That man was our ancestor, and he was a murderer. I felt the blood drain from my face. A murderer? He killed his own brother in the late 1800s. The scandal nearly ruined this family, but it was covered up, buried, only a few of us ever knew. And Grandpa kept his portrait hidden in the woman in blue? He painted over it or had someone paint over it. I don't know why he kept it instead of destroying it. Because he wanted me to find it, I whispered. My father slammed his glass down, liquid splashing. No, he wanted to torture us with it. That's all he ever did, play games. Dad, leave it alone, Sarah. Some truths aren't meant to be uncovered. I left the library shaking, my mind spinning. That night at dinner, the tension was worse than ever. Michael drank too much wine, his face flushed. Oh, sister, he slurred, find any new treasures today? I set my fork down. I don't know what you mean. Don't play dumb, you've been sneaking around. Michael, my mother warned. No, let him talk, I said. Michael leaned forward. You think you're smarter than us, you think Grandpa loved you more, but you don't know what kind of man he really was. And you do? I shot back. He sneered. I know enough to say he wasn't the saint you think. He had blood on his hands, too. The table went silent. My mother's fork froze halfway to her mouth. My father's face turned red. "Shut up, Michael," my father growled. Michael smirked. "Why? Because she deserves to know? Or because you're afraid she'll find out on her own?" I stared between them, my heart racing. "What is he talking about?" Nobody answered. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. "Fine, if you won't tell me, I'll find out myself." Then I left the table. Later, in my room, David knocked. I let him in, pacing back and forth. "They're all hiding something," I said. "They always have," he replied. "I don't know who to trust." "You can trust me," he said softly. I looked at him. His eyes were steady, but there was that flicker again, the hesitation, the shadow of something he wasn't saying. "Can I?" I asked. He swallowed. "Yes." I wanted to believe him. But Grandpa's warning echoed in my ears. Trust no one. After David left, I sat by the window staring into the dark garden. Somewhere below, I saw a figure moving between the hedges. Tall, broad-shouldered, watching the house. I whispered, "Who are you?" But the figure melted back into the shadows. Sleep came late, and when it did, it was filled with dreams of blue gowns and angry eyes staring at me from beneath layers of paint. The next morning, I woke to pounding on my door. I stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and opened it to find Michael standing there, red-faced and impatient. "We need to talk," he said. "It's barely 8, I muttered. "Then wake up." He pushed past me into the room without asking. I crossed my arms. "What do you want, Michael?" He turned to me, his expression tight. "What did you find in the gallery last night?" I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb. I saw the equipment, the scanners. You're digging into the paintings. What did you see?" "Nothing," I lied. He stepped closer. "Sarah, if you don't tell me, I'll tear that gallery apart until I find it myself." I swallowed hard. "Then I hope you like wasting your time." He glared at me for a long moment, then stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sank onto my bed, shaking. He knew, maybe not everything, but enough to make me vulnerable. Later, downstairs, Thomas was waiting in the parlor with a folder in his lap. "I need a word," he said when I passed. I sighed. "What now?" He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." I stayed standing. "Say it." His eyes narrowed. "Fine. I've been reviewing the trust. Do you know what happens if you fail to maintain the collection properly?" "No," I admitted. "It reverts to the next of kin. That would be me and Michael." I felt my chest tight. "You're lying." He smiled coldly. "Read it yourself." He slid the folder across the table. I didn't touch it. "So that's your angle. Wait for me to slip up." "I don't have to wait," he said calmly. "I just have to prove you already have." I stormed out before he could see how badly my hands were shaking. In the kitchen, I found my mother arranging silverware as if the world wasn't collapsing around us. "Mom," I said, "did you know about the reversion clause?" She looked at me coolly. "Of course, your grandfather wasn't a fool. And you didn't think to mention it? You need to learn how to survive in this family, Sarah. No one hands you the truth, you earn it." "Earn it?" I snapped. "I'm your daughter." Her voice softened slightly. "That is exactly why I'm telling you be careful. Your brothers will use every mistake against you. They already are." I stared at her, wondering if that was concern or just another warning to protect the family name. That afternoon, David and I returned to the gallery to examine the woman in blue again. The hidden face beneath the paint still glowed faintly on the scanner. I couldn't look away. "He looks so angry," I whispered. "Whoever he wasn't meant to be remembered," David said. "But he is, and Grandpa wanted me to find him." I traced the outline on the image. "If he's really our ancestor, what else did he do?" David hesitated. "Do you really want to know?" "Yes." "Then brace yourself. Families like yours don't get this wealthy without blood on their hands." Before I could answer, we heard footsteps. We shut the scanner off quickly as Thomas entered. He looked around, eyes sharp. "Still hiding in here?" he asked. "Studying," I said firmly. He smirked. "Studying or snooping?" "Maybe both." His smirk widened. "Then you're more like Grandpa than you think." He left without another word, but the way he said it made my skin crawl. That night at dinner, the atmosphere was poisonous. Michael drank heavily, glaring at me across the table. Thomas ate slowly, studying every word I said. My mother filled the silence with polite chatter, pretending nothing was wrong. My father was quiet, his eyes bloodshot, his glass never empty. Finally, Michael slammed his glass down. "Why don't we just stop pretending? She's digging into things she has no right to." "Michael," my mother snapped. "No, let him speak," I said, my voice trembling with anger. He pointed at me. "You think you're protecting Grandpa's legacy. You're not, you're destroying us. You have no idea what you've unleashed." "Then tell me," I shouted. "Tell me what I've unleashed." He leaned back, laughing bitterly. "Ask Dad, he knows." All eyes turned to my father. He shifted uncomfortably. "Henry," my mother said sharply, "say nothing." My father's voice cracked. "Edward should have burned it all, every last piece. He wanted to test us, and now he's laughing from the grave." I stood, my chair toppling behind me. You're all keeping secrets from me, but I'll find them whether you help me or not. Then I stormed out. In the hallway, David caught up to me. Sarah, slow down. I stopped, tears burning my eyes. They're all lying to me. I know. I don't know who to trust. He placed his hands gently on my shoulders. You can trust me. For a moment I leaned into him, desperate for comfort. But then Grandpa's words echoed again in my mind, trust no one. That night I locked my door and shoved a chair against it. I sat awake until dawn, staring at the letter in my hands, the words blurring from exhaustion. When sleep finally came, I dreamed of the angry man under the paint stepping out of the canvas, whispering in my ear. His voice was low, gravelly, and it said only one thing, you don't belong here. The estate felt like it was collapsing in on itself. Every hallway seemed darker, every shadow heavier. I walked with the journal hidden under my sweater, my heart racing as if my grandfather himself was watching me. His words on the page echoed in my mind. He had known about the man beneath the woman in blue. He had called him a murderer. And he had written that the collection was evidence. Evidence of what? That question clawed at me like a wound I could not stop touching. I sat in his study for hours, poring over the pages. Some entries were ordinary notes about auctions and acquisitions, but every few pages there were hints. Mentions of betrayals, of scandals hushed up, of wealth built on silence. I turned a page and froze when I read one line, the truth is dangerous. If revealed, it will destroy us, yet I cannot erase it. One day Sarah will understand why I chose her. I whispered out loud, why me, Grandpa? Why would you drag me into this? The sound of a throat clearing behind me made me jump. Michael was leaning in the doorway, his arms crossed, his smile sharp. Talking to yourself already? That did not take long. I snapped the journal shut. What do you want? He sauntered into the room. I want to know what you are hiding. Nothing. Liar, you have that guilty look on your face. I said I am not hiding anything. Michael leaned closer until I could smell the wine on his breath. Do you think you can keep secrets from me? You were never good at lying, Sarah. Get out of here, I said, my voice trembling. He smirked. Sooner or later, it will all belong to us anyway. You are just babysitting until you collapse. I clutched the journal against me. You will never touch this collection, not while I am alive. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. We will see about that. Then he walked out, whistling as if nothing had happened. I sank into the chair, shaking so hard I thought my knees would give out. I wanted to run, but where could I go? The estate was a trap, and my brothers were tightening it around me. Later in the garden, I caught David on the phone. He was pacing near the hedge, speaking low and fast. When he saw me, he ended the call too quickly. Who was that? I asked. A colleague, he said casually. From Yale? Yeah. I tilted my head. Funny. I thought I heard Thomas's name. His eyes flickered for a split second before he laughed. You must be hearing things. My chest tightened. I wanted to believe him, but the doubt gnawed at me. That night my mother summoned us to the dining room. She stood at the head of the table, pearls shining, posture straight. My father sat stiffly in his chair, glass in hand. Michael lounged back with a smirk, and Thomas leafed through documents as if the rest of us did not exist. This family is falling apart, my mother said firmly. Michael groaned. No kidding. Be quiet, she snapped. Do not tell me to be quiet when she is the one causing all of this, Michael said, pointing at me. I am not causing anything, I shot back. I am doing exactly what Grandpa wanted. What Grandpa wanted was chaos, Michael said bitterly. He wanted us to fight like animals. Thomas finally looked up. Grandpa wanted control. Even from the grave he has it. I stared at all of them, my hands trembling. You are all terrified of him, even now, admit it. My father's voice was rough. He pulled the strings, Sarah, and you are the last puppet he set in motion. I am not his puppet, I shouted. I am the only one actually listening to him. I stormed into the gallery, the paintings glowing in the dim light. The woman in blue looked down at me, her eyes soft but unyielding. I pressed my hand against the frame. Tell me what I am supposed to do, I whispered. Talking to ghosts again? I spun around. Thomas was leaning in the doorway, his expression calm but cutting. Go away, I muttered. He stepped inside slowly. You think you are special because he chose you, but he chose you because you were the easiest to manipulate. That is not true. Of course it is. He knew Michael was too reckless. He knew I would fight him. But you adored him. You would follow any breadcrumb he left. You are wrong, I said, but my voice shook. Thomas smirked. Maybe you already know I am right. Then he turned and walked out, leaving me trembling in the silence. I stayed there until the house went quiet. Then I went to my room, sat by the window, and stared out into the garden. The moon was full, casting pale light across the hedges and the fountain. And then I saw him, the figure again. Tall, broad-shouldered, standing perfectly still as if carved from stone. I whispered, "Who are you?" This time the figure did not vanish immediately. Slowly, deliberately, he raised an arm. He pointed at the gallery. My blood turned cold. Then, as before, he melted back into the shadows. I barely slept. When dawn came, I went straight to David. "Someone is watching the house," I said. He frowned. "Who?" "I do not know, but it is not staff. I saw him again last night." He pointed toward the gallery. David looked away too quickly. "Probably just one of the groundskeepers." "No. It was not staff." "Then let me handle it," he said firmly. I searched his face. "Why do I feel like you know more than you are telling me?" His eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw something unguarded. "Because maybe I do." Before I could speak, Michael barged in. "Family meeting," he said. "Now." We gathered in the parlor. My mother stood by the fireplace. My father sat stiff and silent. Michael and Thomas flanked me, one on each side. Michael spoke first. "We have decided something. If you care about this family, you will sign over joint control of the collection. 3 signatures instead of 1. That way we all share responsibility." "Responsibility?" I said bitterly. "You mean profit?" Thomas's voice was calm. "Think of it as protection. You are outnumbered, Sarah. If you do not cooperate, you will destroy yourself." I stood, my hands shaking but my voice strong. "No, Grandpa trusted me. I will not betray him." The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother finally said in a low voice, "Then you leave us no choice." I stared at her. "What choice?" No one answered, but I knew in that silence that I had crossed a line. From that moment on, I was not just their sister. I was their enemy. The words my mother had spoken kept replaying in my mind. "Then you leave us no choice." I did not sleep that night. I sat in my room with the journal open on my lap, staring at my grandfather's handwriting until the letters blurred. Every few minutes I would get up and check the lock on my door, then sit down again, then pace the floor. I was trapped in a house that felt less like home and more like a cage. By morning the tension had shifted into something sharper. My brothers no longer bothered to hide their hostility. Michael walked past me in the hall and muttered, "Tick-tock." When I asked what he meant, he just smiled and kept walking. Thomas looked at me like I was a witness he intended to break on the stand. At breakfast, no one spoke until my mother set down her coffee cup and said, "We are being watched." Everyone looked up. "What do you mean?" I asked. "There are cars I do not recognize parked near the estate. There are men I have never seen lingering by the gates. This is not coincidence." Michael chuckled. "Maybe Sarah's secret admirer is staking out the place." "Shut up," I snapped. Thomas leaned forward. "She is right. The collection attracts attention. If word has leaked, we could be targets." My father grunted. "Your grandfather made enemies. Some of them never forgave him. If Sarah insists on digging, she might wake them up again." My chest tightened. "You are blaming me for this?" "You are the one pulling at threads," Thomas said smoothly. "Threads that should have stayed buried." "I am the one doing what Grandpa asked," I shot back. Michael slammed his hand on the table. "Enough about Grandpa. He is dead, and he left us this mess. If you were smart, you would sign the papers and let us handle it before it blows up in your face." I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "I am not signing anything." The room went silent. After breakfast, I escaped to the gallery, the only place where I could still breathe. I stood before the woman in blue again, her painted eyes following me. I whispered, "What are you hiding from me?" David slipped in quietly. "You are talking to her again." I turned. "She knows something. I can feel it." He studied the portrait. Maybe the man beneath her was not the only secret. Sometimes artists painted symbols, messages, things you can only see if you know where to look. I leaned closer to the canvas. The folds of her gown, the pattern on the wall behind her, the shadow of a table, my breath caught. "There, do you see it? That shape in the background." David squinted. "It looks like a key?" "Yes, a key." We stared at each other. "Maybe there is something hidden in this house," I whispered. "Something locked away." Before he could answer, the door creaked open and my father entered. His face was pale, his hand shaking as he gripped his glass. "Stop," he said hoarsely. "Whatever you think you are doing, stop now." "Dad," I said, "what do you know?" He shook his head. "Edward wanted to punish us. He wanted us to suffer. He has dragged you into his madness. Do not follow him." "You are hiding something," I said. "Of course I am," he whispered. "We all are. That is how this family survived." "But some truths are poison, Sarah. Drink them and you will never recover." He left before I could say another word. I turned to David. "Did you hear that?" He nodded slowly. "The poison is already spreading." That night another storm rolled in. Rain lashed against the windows. I sat in my room with the journal open, trying to trace every clue. Around midnight, there was a soft knock at my door. "It is me," David's voice whispered. I let him in. He was drenched from the rain. What were you doing outside? I asked. Looking for the figure you saw, he said. My heart skipped. And I saw someone tall wearing a dark coat. He was standing by the fountain again. When I called out, he ran. I swallowed hard. So he is real. Yes, David said, and whoever he is, he knows something. We need to find him. Before I could respond, Michael burst into the room without knocking. His face was red, his eyes bloodshot. What are you two plotting? He demanded. Get out, I snapped. Not until you tell me what you are hiding. David stepped between us. This is not the time. Michael shoved him. I am talking to her, not you. I shouted, stop it. Michael pointed at me. You are destroying this family. You think Grandpa chose you because you are special. He chose you because you are weak, and now you are dragging all of us down. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I stood tall. No, Michael, he chose me because he knew you would destroy everything. His face twisted with rage. For a moment I thought he might hit me, then he turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. David looked at me, his face tense. He is unraveling. So am I whispered. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally I asked, David, are you sure I can trust you? His eyes met mine. He hesitated just a fraction of a second before saying, yes, always. But my grandfather's words echoed in my head again. Trust no one. When I finally slept, I dreamed of the key in the painting glowing with light, opening a door deep within the house. On the other side was darkness. And in that darkness, the man with angry eyes whispered my name. The morning after that awful family meeting, I felt as though the air in the estate had thickened into something I could barely breathe. I woke with the weight of my grandfather's journal pressing against my chest. I had fallen asleep holding it as if it could protect me. I knew deep down that whatever truth he wanted me to uncover was going to come at a cost. I hurried down to the gallery before anyone else was awake. The woman in blue waited for me, her face soft, her eyes following me as though she knew I had questions only she could answer. I leaned close to the folds of her painted gown and searched again. That strange, shadowed shape was not just a brushstroke. It was deliberate. It looked like a key. I whispered, you are guarding something, aren't you? Talking to her again? Michael's mocking voice came from the doorway. I stiffened. He always had a way of appearing when I was most vulnerable. You would not understand, I said without turning. You are right, I do not, he replied. He stepped closer, his shoes clicking against the floor. I do not understand why Grandpa trusted a nervous little girl who talks to paintings instead of the sons who actually mattered to him. I faced him. Get out. He grinned. Not until you understand something. That collection is too big for you, too dangerous. You are going to choke on it. And when you do, Thomas and I will be right here to take it all. Save yourself the pain and just sign the papers. I will never sign, I snapped. His grin vanished, replaced by cold anger. Then do not say I did not warn you. He walked out slowly, letting his laughter echo through the hall. My hands shook as I pressed them against the frame of the painting. My grandfather's voice from the journal rang in my ears. The woman in blue guards the first piece of the puzzle. Look deeper. I heard footsteps behind me again, but this time it was David. He carried a notebook and looked tired like he had not slept. You are pale, he said. What happened? Michael was here. Let me guess. He tried to scare you again. He said I will choke on this collection, I whispered. David's jaw tightened. He wants you to break. That is all he has. He is not wrong about one thing, I admitted. It feels too big, like I am drowning in secrets I do not understand. David set the notebook down. I found something last night. Renovation notes from the 1970s. They mention a hollow space behind this wall. I turned sharply. A hidden compartment? He nodded. Yes, it was sealed during the renovation. But the notes suggested it had been used to store documents. I ran my hands along the paneling beside the painting, tapping lightly. When my knuckles hit a hollow spot, my breath caught. Here, I whispered. Together we pushed, and with a soft groan the panel gave way. Behind it was a narrow cavity coated with dust. Inside was a metal box, heavy and cold, its iron clasp rusted shut. My heart was hammered. Oh my God. David lifted it carefully. It is locked. The key, I breathed. The shape in the painting. It is the key. We stared at each other. Do you think it is still in the house? David asked. It has to be, I said. Grandpa wanted me to find this. He would not have left me without a way to open it. We slid the panel closed just as footsteps echoed down the hall. The door opened and Thomas stepped in. His eyes swept the room, then landed on us. Cataloging again, he said smoothly. Yes, I answered too quickly. Cataloging what? Paintings, dates, nothing unusual. Thomas's eyes lingered on the wall where the panel was hidden. My stomach dropped. Finally, he said, Be careful, Sarah. Curiosity is a disease in this family. It kills faster than greed. He left as suddenly as he had appeared. I let out a shaky breath. He suspects. David's eyes narrowed. Then we cannot let him get ahead of us. That evening, my mother held a formal dinner for old family friends. The house glowed with candles, the dining room heavy with the smell of roasted meat and expensive wine. I felt like I was sitting on stage under a spotlight, every eye studying me. A woman with a string of diamonds around her throat leaned toward me. So you are the chosen granddaughter. It must feel glorious to inherit the Whitmore collection. It feels like a burden, I said. Michael laughed loud enough for the table to hear. She calls it a burden because she cannot handle it. She spends her days whispering to dead people on canvas. Polite laughter rippled across the table. My face burned hot. Michael, my mother hissed, enough, but he went on. Tell me, sister, when you finally break down completely, should we send you to a doctor or straight to an auction house? My chair scraped back sharply. Excuse me. I fled before anyone could stop me. The garden air was cool, the fountain murmuring like a secret. I pressed my palms against the stone rim, trying to breathe. Then I felt it again, the sensation of being watched. I turned and there he was, the figure in the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered. Perfectly still. Who are you? I whispered. He did not answer. He raised his arm slowly, deliberately, and pointed toward the gallery. Wait, I called, stepping forward, but he melted into the hedges and was gone. I stood frozen, my breath coming in sharp gasps. When I returned inside, David was waiting near the door. Sarah, where were you? In the garden, I said, my voice shook. I saw him again. David frowned. Describe him. The same as before, tall, wearing a dark coat. He pointed to the gallery again. That cannot be coincidence, David said. No, I whispered. It is not. He wants me to keep looking. Then we need to find the key, David said firmly. Whatever is in that box, it is the reason your grandfather trusted you. I looked at him. What if it destroys us? His eyes were steady. It already is. That night, I locked myself in my room and set the metal box on the floor in front of me. The iron clasp was rough under my fingers. Somewhere in this house, hidden in plain sight, was the key that would open it. I sat there staring at it for hours, terrified that once I turned that key, nothing in my life would ever be the same again. And as the rain beat against the windows, I heard my grandfather's words in my head, whispering like a curse. Look deeper. The box sat at the foot of my bed like a living thing. I woke in the night to the sound of rain against the windows and the faint metallic glint of the clasp catching moonlight. I did not dare touch it again, but I could not stop looking at it either. When morning came, I felt as if I had not slept at all. I carried the box carefully to the gallery. David was already waiting. His eyes widened when he saw me cradling it. You should not be walking around with that, he whispered. I cannot keep it in my room, I said. Someone will find it. Then we need to hide it somewhere no one will think to look. Where? David scanned the gallery. For now, behind the panel again. Until we find the key. We slid it back into the hidden cavity and closed the wall. I pressed my hand against the wood as though sealing a secret into the heart of the house. As we stepped away, I noticed Michael watching us from the hallway. He leaned lazily against the doorframe, his smile full of venom. What are you two hiding? He asked. Nothing, I said quickly. Nothing always looks a lot like something when you slam doors and whisper. He pushed past us into the gallery, glancing around. Funny how you spend all your time here, Sarah, obsessed with a dead man's toys. Leave, I snapped. Michael smirked. I will, but I will find out what you are hiding, and when I do, you will wish you had trusted me. He strolled out, humming to himself. David muttered, he is going to tear this place apart. Then we need to stay ahead of him, I said. We decided to start searching for the key immediately. If my grandfather had painted it into the woman in blue, he must have hidden it somewhere close by. We searched the gallery first, moving carefully so no one would hear us. We opened drawers, examined frames, and tapped on the floorboards. Hours passed. Dust clung to my hands, and the smell of old wood filled my lungs. Finally, I slumped into a chair. Nothing. What if he wanted us to fail? David sat across from me. No, he wanted you to find it. The question is, where would he put it? Somewhere meaningful. My grandfather loved riddles, I murmured. He would have chosen a place tied to memory. The library. We hurried there when the house grew quiet. Shelves towered around us, rows of leather spines glowing in the lamplight. I ran my fingers across them. David pulled out a book of poetry. Anything? No. I tugged at another and froze. A hollow thud answered. Here, I whispered. We pulled the book free. Behind it was a small recess cut into the shelf. Inside lay a velvet pouch, the fabric faded with age. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a key, old, iron, ornate. Oh my God, I breathed. David leaned close. That has to be it. We stood frozen, staring at it, when suddenly the sound of footsteps echoed in the hall. I shoved the key into my pocket and slammed the book back into place just as the library door opened. Thomas stepped inside, his eyes cold. "What are you doing in here?" he asked. "Reading," I said quickly. "At this hour?" "I could ask you the same." He studied us. His gaze lingered on my pocket and my stomach twisted. Finally he said, "You are both playing a dangerous game. Be careful before you lose." Then he walked out, closing the door softly behind him. I leaned against the shelf, my knees weak. "He knows," I whispered. "Then we have to move fast," David said. That night we returned to the gallery with the key. My hands trembled as I pressed it into the clasp of the metal box. For a moment it resisted. Then with a sharp click it turned. The lid creaked open. Inside were stacks of letters tied with ribbon, and at the very bottom a leather-bound folder. I pulled one letter free. The handwriting was old, spidery, but unmistakably Whitmore, my grandfather's father. "To hide the blood is to protect the name. But the sin is still ours. Do not let the truth escape. If it does, the family will fall." I read it aloud in a whisper. David's face went pale. "There is more," he said, lifting the folder. He opened it to reveal yellowed photographs. Black and white images of a man I recognized instantly from beneath the paint, the ancestor. His eyes burned even in faded ink. On the back of one photograph was written a single word: murderer. I felt my chest tighten. "This is what Grandpa wanted me to find." David whispered, "Sarah, this is evidence. If these letters are true, your family covered up a crime generations ago." I stared at the box, my hands shaking. Before I could speak, the sound of a floorboard creaking froze me. I looked up. In the gallery doorway stood Michael, his eyes locked on the open box. "What?" he said slowly. "Have you got there?" Michael's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "What have you got there?" I froze with the letter still in my hand. David closed the folder quickly, but it was too late. Michael had already seen enough. He stepped into the gallery, his eyes gleaming like a predator. "Move," he said. "Oh," I replied, clutching the letter tighter. He laughed, a low, dangerous sound. "You think you can keep this from me? You think you can stand between me and what belongs to this family?" "It does not belong to you," I said firmly. "It belongs to the truth." Michael snatched the box off the table before I could stop him. He tore through the letters, flipping pages, his face twisting with rage. "What is this garbage? Old accusations? Ghost stories?" "They are not ghost stories," I snapped. "They are confessions. Our family covered up a murder." He looked up sharply, his eyes narrowing. "And you believe this? You believe Grandpa's sick games?" "I have seen the face under the paint," I whispered. "I know he was real." Michael's jaw clenched. "Even if it is true, you will never expose it. Do you hear me? Never." David stepped between us. "Michael, calm down." "Stay out of this," Michael barked. David held his ground. "If you lay a hand on her, you will regret it." Michael's laugh was bitter. "What are you, her guard dog? Or do you think protecting her will get you a piece of this fortune?" "This is not about money," David said. Michael sneered. "It is always about money. Do not pretend otherwise." He shoved the folder back into the box and snapped it shut. "I am taking this." "No," I said, stepping forward. "Yes," he snarled. "And if you try to stop me, I will make sure every court in New England hears that you are unstable, delusional, unfit to handle a collection of stamps, let alone art worth billions. I will ruin you, Sarah." The words hit like blows, but something inside me snapped. "You cannot ruin me with lies when I have the truth," I said, my voice shaking but strong. "These letters, these photographs, the painting itself, they prove everything." Michael's eyes blazed. For a moment I thought he might strike me. But then Thomas appeared in the doorway, his face unreadable. "What is going on here?" he asked coolly. Michael spun toward him. "She found something, old letters, trash, nothing important." Thomas's gaze flicked to me. "Is that true, Sarah?" I hesitated. "No, it is not trash, it is the truth." Michael exploded. "Do not listen to her. She is obsessed. She is losing her mind." Thomas walked forward slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "Show me." I held the letter up. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to read aloud. "To hide the blood is to protect the name. But the sin is still ours. Do not let the truth escape. If it does, the family will fall." The room went still. Thomas's expression did not change, but his voice was softer when he spoke. "So it is true." Michael shouted. "No, it is lies. Grandpa planted it to pit us against each other." "Or," Thomas said calmly, "he planted it so we would finally face who we are." Michael shook his head violently. "I will not let this destroy us. I will not." He grabbed the box and stormed toward the door, but I leapt in front of him. "Give it back," I said. "Move," he growled. "No." For a long moment we stood inches apart, both trembling with fury. Finally Thomas stepped forward and snatched the box from Michael's hands. "That is enough," he said. Michael glared at him. You are siding with her now? I am siding with the truth, Thomas replied, Michael's face twisted with betrayal. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. Silence fell. Thomas set the box back on the table. His eyes met mine. You need to be careful. Michael is dangerous when cornered. I know, I whispered. David put a hand on my shoulder. What do we do now? I looked at the letters, the photographs, the evidence of sins buried for generations. My voice was steady when I said, we keep going, we uncover everything. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I knew I had crossed a line that could never be undone. Michael would not stop. He would come for me again. But for the first time, I did not feel powerless. I had the truth, and I was ready to use it. The morning after Michael stormed out of the gallery, I woke with the weight of dread pressing on my chest. I had hidden the letters beneath the lining of an old suitcase in my closet, but I still felt as though every wall in the house knew what I had done. The papers seemed to burn against the wood, their words echoing in my mind. Do not let the truth escape. If it does, the family will fall. When I walked downstairs, the dining room was already full. The table glittered with silver and porcelain, but the air was heavy with tension. My mother sat at the head of the table, her pearls gleaming like armor. My father hunched over his coffee, silent as stone. Michael lounged in his chair, tapping his spoon against his plate. Thomas read a newspaper as though none of us existed. I slid into my seat and tried to steady my breathing. Michael set his spoon down with a sharp clink. So, Sarah, he said, his voice dripping with false cheer, how is your little research project going? Find any more monsters hiding in the paint? I kept my gaze on my plate. Just cataloging, I said calmly. The usual. Michael leaned forward, his smile sharp. Good. Because if I hear you spreading lies about this family, I will make sure you regret it. Michael, my mother said sharply, enough. He ignored her. His eyes locked on me, and he whispered low enough that only I could hear. Tick-tock, Sarah, tick-tock. My appetite vanished. I forced myself to take a sip of water, my hands trembling. Later that morning, I found myself pacing in the library. The smell of leather and dust filled my lungs. I could not sit still. The walls felt like they were closing in. David came in quietly, carrying a notebook. He's going to try something, I said as soon as I saw him. Let him, David said. The more reckless he gets, the easier it will be to show who he really is. I am scared, I admitted. You are not alone, he said softly. Remember that. I wanted to believe him. But every time his eyes flickered away at the wrong moment, I wondered if he was keeping something from me. We sat at the big oak table and spread out the letters again. Some were neat and elegant, others were rushed and messy. They spoke of money hidden in foreign accounts, witnesses silenced, art purchased not for beauty but as leverage. Each word was another crack in the image of the Whitmore family. One letter chilled me to my core. If the portrait survives, it will testify against us. Cover it, hide it, but do not destroy it. To destroy it would be to confess. I touched the page. That is why they buried the murderer beneath the woman in blue. They could not erase him. Destroying him would have been an admission, so they hid him under beauty. David leaned back, staring at me. Your grandfather wanted you to see this. He wanted you to know what the family had built itself on. Why me? I asked. Why not my brothers? Because you are the only one who still cares about the truth, he said. Before I could answer, the door opened. My father stepped inside slowly. His face was pale, his shoulders slumped. He looked older than I had ever seen him. You should stop, he said quietly. I closed the folder quickly. Dad, you know what this is, don't you? His eyes darkened. I know enough to say that digging will only poison you. Then why did Grandpa leave it to me? Because Edward liked tormenting us, my father whispered. He wanted you to rip apart what we built. No, I said, my voice rising. He trusted me. He believed I would protect the truth. My father's gaze flickered. For a moment I saw something raw, fear, regret, maybe even love, but then he shook his head. Sometimes the truth destroys more than lies ever could. He turned and left without another word. I sat shaking, the silence pressing against me. That evening a storm rolled in. The rain hammered the windows, wind howled against the shutters. I sat cross-legged on my bed with the letters spread before me. Lightning lit the room in sharp flashes. The words seemed to dance across the pages, accusing and relentless. There was a knock at my door. Sarah, it was Thomas. I hesitated, then opened the door. He stepped inside, his hands in his pockets, his expression calm but unreadable. May I sit? He asked. I nodded. His eyes moved to the letters scattered on the bed. So it is true, all of it. Yes, I said. Our family covered up a murder. And you plan to tell the world? I do not know yet, I admitted. Thomas studied me for a long moment. If you expose it, you destroy us. If you hide it, you become one of us. Either way, you lose. I am not hiding it, I said. He sighed, leaning forward. Then Michael will come for you harder than before. I can handle him. Thomas shook his head slowly. You do not understand. He is not just angry, he is desperate. Desperate men do terrible things. What are you saying? Watch your back, Thomas whispered. He stood and left before I could ask more. I sat frozen, my hands trembling. Later, after the storm quieted, I went to the window for air. The garden shimmered with rain, and then I saw him, the figure again, standing near the fountain, tall and still as stone. Who are you? I whispered against the glass. He did not answer. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his arm. This time he pointed not at the gallery, but at the library. My heart thudded. I blinked and he was gone. I hurried downstairs. David found me in the hall, my coat half on. You saw him again, he said. Yes. He pointed at the library. David's face went pale. Then that is where we have to look next. But what if it is worse than what we already found? I whispered. Then we face it, he said firmly. Together. For the first time, I wanted to believe him completely. But upstairs, behind closed doors, I knew Michael was planning. His eyes at breakfast, his words like a ticking clock, they were not idle threats. He was waiting, watching, and I could feel it in my bones. The next move would not be whispers. It would be war. The library was darker than usual that night, as if the storm had drained the last bit of light from the air. I slipped inside with David at my side. The heavy wooden doors groaned as I closed them, and the sound echoed through the silence like a warning. The figure in the garden had pointed here. I did not know why, but I felt it deep inside me. Whatever secret my grandfather wanted me to find, it was waiting in this room. David lit a lamp and set it on the central table. The glow stretched across the rows of shelves, turning the books into silent witnesses. Where do we start? He asked. Everywhere, I said, my voice lower than a whisper. We worked for what felt like hours. Dust clung to my fingers as I pulled book after book from the shelves. Some were empty of secrets, just pages yellowed with age. Others held slips of paper, receipts, even a photograph of my mother as a young woman with my grandfather. But nothing felt like what we were searching for. Finally, my hand brushed against the spine of an oversized atlas. It stuck slightly, heavier than it should have been. I tugged, and when it came free, a hollow sound echoed behind it. My heart leapt. David, I whispered. Here. He leaned in, squinting at the dark recess. Carved into the wood inside was a small symbol, curved lines forming a shape I recognized. It is the same symbol as the clasp on the metal box, he said quietly. I traced it with my fingertips. The wood shifted under my touch. With a soft groan, a panel swung open. Inside was a narrow compartment lined with faded velvet. David reached in carefully and pulled out a small leather-bound book. The cover was cracked with age, its pages brittle. What is it? I asked, my voice shaking. He opened it slowly. It is a ledger. I leaned closer. The handwriting was precise, every line filled with numbers, dates, and names. Beside some names were single words: paid, silenced, disappeared. My stomach turned. These are not ordinary records, these are bribes. David turned another page. Look here, the same name appears again and again. I read it and felt my blood run cold. It was the name of the ancestor, the murderer. The reality hit me so hard I could barely breathe. They did not just cover up his crime, they paid to erase him, they bought silence. David's voice was grim. This is a record of corruption that stretches across decades. I closed my eyes. My grandfather had left me evidence not of a single crime, but of a dynasty built on lies and blood. Before I could speak, the door slammed open. Michael filled the doorway, his face red with fury, his eyes shining with triumph. So this is where you have been hiding, he said. I shoved the ledger behind me, but he had already seen it. Get out, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Michael stepped inside, his steps heavy on the wooden floor. I warned you, Sarah, you keep digging and you will regret it. You cannot scare me, I said, though my hands were trembling. He smirked. You really think this matters? Does anyone believe you? These are just old papers. The world does not care about what our great-great-grandfather did. He is dust. The family name, the wealth, that is all that matters, and if you keep pushing, I will destroy you. David stepped forward, blocking him. Back off, Michael. Michael's eyes snapped to him. Why are you always here, David? Why are you so invested in this? What are you after? David's jaw tightened. I believe in her. Michael laughed, the sound bitter. You believe in inheritance. Do not pretend otherwise. You are just another leech hoping to live off my sister's obsession. I stepped forward. Leave him out of this. This is between you and me. Michael leaned close to me, his breath hot and sharp with wine. You want to play this game? Fine. But you will not win. I will make sure you have no job, no credibility, no friends. I will bury you so deep that when you scream, no one will hear. My knees shook, but I did not back down. You cannot bury me with lies when I have the truth. These records prove everything. For a heartbeat, I thought he might hit me. His hand twitched, his eyes burned with rage. Then a calm voice came from the doorway. What is going on here? Thomas stood there, framed by the flickering lamplight. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp. Michael spun around. She found something, worthless papers, nothing important. Thomas looked past him, his gaze locking on mine. Is that true, Sarah? I hesitated, then lifted one of the letters from the ledger. My voice shook, but I read it aloud. If the portrait survives, it will testify against us. Cover it, hide it, but do not destroy it. To destroy it would be to confess. The silence that followed was heavy. Thomas's expression hardened. It is true, Michael shouted. No, it is a trick. Grandpa planted it all to make us tear each other apart. Or, Thomas said evenly, he planted it so we would finally face who we are. Michael's face twisted. Do not lecture me, I will not let her destroy us. He lunged for the ledger. I jerked it away, but he grabbed my wrist hard enough to make me cry out. Let go of her, David shouted, shoving him back. Michael staggered, his fury boiling over. You think you can protect her? You are nothing. Thomas stepped forward quickly and yanked the ledger from Michael's grip. Enough. Michael turned on him, betrayed. You too, are you siding with her? I am siding with reality, Thomas said coldly. Michael's chest heaved, his fists clenched. For a moment I thought he might strike his own brother. Then he spun and stormed out, slamming the door so hard that dust rained down from the shelves. The silence left behind was deafening. Thomas placed the ledger back on the table. His eyes met mine. You need to be careful, he will not stop, and next time he may not just shout. I know, I whispered. David put his hand on my shoulder. What do we do now? I looked at the ledger, at the letters, at the truth my grandfather had hidden for decades. My voice was steady when I said, we keep going, no matter what. That night, back in my room, I locked the door and shoved a chair against it. I curled up with the ledger pressed against my chest. Sometime past midnight, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. They stopped outside my door. The handle turned slowly, but the lock held. Sarah, Michael's voice whispered, low and dangerous. You cannot hide forever. The footsteps faded. I sat in the dark, trembling, waiting for morning. When sleep finally came, I dreamed of the figure in the garden again. Only this time he was closer. His face was clear, his eyes filled with fury. His mouth moved, forming a single word over and over. Run. The morning after hearing Michael's whisper at my door, I felt as though I had not slept at all. My eyes were swollen, my body heavy, but I forced myself to dress and go downstairs. If I stayed hidden, he would think he had already won. The dining room was unusually crowded. My mother was pouring coffee, her pearls gleaming as always. My father sat stiffly, his hands wrapped around his cup. Thomas was already flipping through the newspaper. And Michael was smiling. Calm, polished smile that told me he was up to something. Good morning, Sarah, he said pleasantly, as if nothing had happened in the night. I forced myself to nod. Morning. Halfway through breakfast, my mother set her fork down and cleared her throat. Your brother has informed me that he has filed a petition with the probate court. The room frozen. What petition? I asked. Michael leaned back in his chair, smug. To challenge the terms of the will, on the grounds that you are unfit to manage the collection. My blood went cold. Unfit. Obsessive, unstable, secretive, he said smoothly. All very compelling words when spoken to a judge, and with enough witnesses I will prove it. You cannot do that, I said, my voice breaking. Oh, but I already have, he replied. I looked to my father. You are going to let him do this? My father would not meet my eyes. My mother said softly, Sarah, perhaps this is for the best. Sharing responsibility might protect you. No, I snapped. This is exactly what he wants, to take it all. Michael smirked. At least you are finally admitting it. I shoved my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor. You will not take this from me, I will fight you. His smile widened. Then prepare to lose. I fled the table before I broke down in front of them. In the hall, David caught up to me. Sarah, wait. He filed in court, I said, my voice shaking. He is trying to strip me of everything. Then we need to get ahead of him, David said firmly. How? By showing that what you have found is not an obsession, it is evidence. If the court sees that you are protecting something valuable, something real, it will strengthen your position. I shook my head. Or it will expose everything. David placed a hand on my shoulder. You do not have to do this alone. I wanted to believe him, but part of me still wondered who he had been calling that night in the garden. Later, I went back to the library. The ledger sat heavy on the table, its pages full of names and transactions. I turned them slowly, searching for something that could save me, then I found it. a page marked with my grandfather's handwriting, not his father's. The ink was darker, the script sharper. If they come for her, show them this. It will end their claim. I read it aloud, my hands trembling. He knew this would happen. He knew Michael would try to take it from me. David leaned over my shoulder. What is it? It is proof, I said, but I do not know what yet. We studied the entry. It referenced a sealed package stored in the estate's vault. There is a vault? David asked. Yes, I whispered. Grandpa's private vault in the cellar. It has not been opened since he died. My heart pounded. I had avoided it because the thought of going down there alone terrified me, but now I had no choice. That evening, while the others were drinking in the parlor, I crept toward the cellar with David. The air grew colder with every step. The stone walls dripped with moisture and the light bulbs flickered overhead. At the end of the hall stood the vault door, heavy, iron, my grandfather's initials carved into the metal. David touched the lock. Do you have the combination? Yes, he gave it to me in his will. My fingers shook as I spun the dial. The final click echoed like thunder. Slowly, the door creaked open. Inside were shelves lined with boxes, folders, and sealed envelopes. Dust hung thick in the air. We stepped inside. I found a box marked with my grandfather's handwriting, for Sarah. I pulled it down, my hands trembling. Inside were documents, photographs, and a small cassette tape. David held up the tape. Do you have a player? Yes, I whispered. We hurried back upstairs to my room. I locked the door, slid the tape into a small recorder, and pressed play. The crackle of static filled the air. Then my grandfather's voice. If you are hearing this, Sarah, then it means the battle has begun. They will come for you. They will call you weak, unstable, unworthy. Do not listen. I chose you because you are the only one I trust to face the truth. Tears burned my eyes. His voice continued. In the vault you will find evidence. Enough to end their claims in court. Enough to show the world who we truly are. But you must decide. Protect the name or destroy it. Either way, you will be alone. The tape clicked off. David looked at me. He knew everything. Yes, I whispered, and he left me a weapon. Before we could say more, there was a pounding at my door. Sarah, Michael's voice thundered, open up. I shoved the tape and documents under the mattress, my heart racing. I know you are in there, he growled. You cannot hide forever. The court date is set. You are finished. He slammed his fist against the door so hard the wood rattled. I pressed my back against it, trembling. Inside my mind, my grandfather's voice echoed again. Do not listen. I chose you. The day of the court hearing felt like stepping into a nightmare I could not wake from. The estate was silent that morning, too silent. Even the usual clinking of china at breakfast was gone. My mother had locked herself in her room, refusing to face me. My father was nowhere to be found, lost in another drunken haze. Only Michael and Thomas moved with purpose, one preparing to destroy me, the other unreadable as ever. I dressed slowly, my hands shaking as I buttoned my blouse. The folder lay on the desk beside me, filled with the letters, the ledger, the photographs, and the cassette tape. Every time I touched it, it felt heavier, as if carrying the weight of an entire century of sins. David knocked softly on the door. You ready? No, I admitted. He stepped inside. But you are going anyway. Yes. Then you are ready enough. We drove into the city in silence. The courthouse loomed like a fortress, gray stone against a gray sky. Reporters swarmed the steps, shouting questions, their cameras flashing. Miss Whitmore, is it true your grandfather left you a cursed collection? Are you hiding something? Is it true your brothers believe you're unstable? I kept my head down and pushed through. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. I could feel every eye on me. Michael sat with his lawyers, sharp suits and sharper tongues. He looked calm, confident, already victorious. My mother sat behind him, her posture perfect, her face cold. Thomas sat apart from them, silent, watching. The judge entered. The gavel struck. Michael's lawyer rose first. He painted me as unfit, obsessive, paranoid, emotionally unstable. He described me as a woman drowning in fantasies, clinging to whispers of ghosts instead of reality. He pointed to my late nights in the gallery, my supposed talking to paintings, my refusal to share the inheritance. Every word was like a dagger. She is unfit to manage a collection of such value, the lawyer declared. To protect the assets, we request joint control be granted to her brothers. Michael smirked at me across the room, his eyes glittering with triumph. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly, my legs trembling. I held the folder to my chest, my grandfather's words echoing in my mind. They will call you weak, unstable, unworthy. Do not listen. I chose you. I stepped forward. My grandfather left me this collection because he trusted me to uncover the truth. What my brothers call obsession is dedication. What they call delusion is evidence. I placed the folder on the judge's bench and opened it. Inside lay the letters, the photographs, the ledger, and finally the cassette tape. These are records of crimes my family tried to bury. Cover-ups, bribes, blood spilled generations ago. My grandfather did not want them hidden forever. He wanted the truth to survive. That is why he chose me. The judge leaned forward, scanning the documents. Murmurs filled the courtroom as the photographs were passed around, showing the face of the ancestor beneath the paint. Then the tape was played. Crackling filled the room, then my grandfather's voice, strong even through the static. If you are hearing this, Sarah, then it means the battle has begun. They will come for you. They will call you weak, unstable, unworthy. Do not listen. I chose you because you are the only one I trust to face the truth. Gasps rippled through the room. The judge's eyes widened. This is extraordinary. Michael leapt to his feet, his voice breaking. It is fake. She forged it. This is manipulation. The judge slammed the gavel. Sit down, Mr. Whitmore. Michael's face turned red. You cannot do this. She will ruin us all. But his words only made him look unhinged. The tide had turned. The judge reviewed the evidence, then spoke firmly. The will stands. Full control of the collection remains with Sarah Whitmore. The gavel struck. It was over. Michael shoved past me as he stormed out, his eyes blazing with hatred. You think you have won, but you destroyed us. You destroyed everything. I turned to him, my voice steady. No, I saved us from living a lie. He glared at me, trembling with rage. I swear you will regret this. He disappeared into the crowd, leaving a trail of fury in his wake. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed again, shouting questions. Flashes blinded me. I barely heard them. My legs carried me forward on instinct, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Thomas found me on the steps. He placed a hand on my arm. You did it. I did, I whispered. And now, I looked at the gray sky, now I decide what to do with the truth. Back at the estate, the air felt different. The walls no longer pressed in with the same suffocating weight. I walked straight to the gallery, the woman in blue waiting for me. Her painted eyes were softer now, almost human. The box lay open on the table. The letters and ledger surrounded me, evidence of a past built on blood. I sat before them, my hands shaking. I could keep them hidden, protect what was left of my family's name, or I could release them, letting the world know who we truly were. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. Protect the truth. The next morning, I made my choice. I donated the entire collection to the museum where I worked. Every painting, every artifact, every piece cataloged and preserved for the public. Alongside them, I released the letters, the ledger, and the photographs. I let the truth become part of history, no longer locked in a house of shadows. The fallout was immediate. My brothers cut me off completely. Michael sent one final letter, filled with venom, promising I would never be family to him again. Thomas wrote nothing, but I knew he understood. My mother called me a traitor. My father never spoke to me again. The family name shattered, the estate emptied. But in the art world, I became something else. Invitations came from museums, universities, cultural institutions, not because I was a Whitmore, but because I had chosen honesty over legacy. I became known not just as a curator, but as a voice for transparency, a guardian of stories once buried. Standing in the museum months later, I looked at the woman in blue. She hung in a new gallery, surrounded by students and scholars, her beauty no longer a mask but a testimony. I pressed my hand to the glass. I did what you wanted, Grandpa. I kept the truth alive. For a moment, her eyes seemed to soften, and though I had lost my family, I had gained something else. A purpose, a voice, a certainty that no inheritance, no fortune, no name was worth more than truth. The truth had cost me everything, but it had given me myself.